Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
We've got spirits. Yes, we do.
That's right, Ruben Bressler.
Hey, how's it going?
It is wonderful.
You were supposed to finish the cheer. You were supposed to say,
We've got spirit. How about you?
the
All right.
worst cheerleader ever.
Wow. We got... Okay. Wow. Jeez. Well, it is time to get in the spirit of things, isn't it? Because we also begin... Yeah, you're welcome. We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 Easter eggs. Ruben?
This week's winner is Katie N. McWitt, and brevity is the soul of wit, and I really like this short comment, which is, do the math, folks. Niv Mizzet is number one, written as the flavor text from the original Niv Mizzet, the Fire Mind, as a mathematical equation that if you turn it sideways and read it from top to bottom, the Z becomes an N, the greater than symbol becomes the V, etc.
Right. Absolutely terrific. So sometimes you don't have to do a long treatise, you know, you don't got to write a speech or nothing.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you just do the math.
Yeah, we got a lot of really positive feedback on this one. And I've noticed that the feedback is different. Like, I feel like the fans, and they can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I feel like they like it when we go off the beaten path more and we leave it up to more. I feel like the shows like the last one are way more subjective. And I've noticed the feedback is different, and I feel like we get more. Like, I feel like the viewers are better. Like the likes are more, and so I hope we can find more obscure topics.
Absolutely, yeah. Any more obscure topics that are much more opinion based? Definitely fit our mold.
Top 10 ways Ruben is wrong. Yep, that's next week. That's going to be great.
Cool,
right? But
top 10 camera angles for your selfies. Just I can handle that one.
Well, if you support us at just the $1 or above level, you can get to our Discord. That's where we hang out, we chitter chat. It's crazy.
We have an amazing Discord community. Like, I'm so proud of the little community that we've built, and the fact that we can be alone, and that they settle their differences well when they have them. And I remember so many of the names, and they make me so happy. So come say hello to us.
Absolutely.
And if you do support us at the Discord, you can leave your comments in the feedback.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a feedback and improvement channel where you can tell us what we can improve and what we could do, and
future top 10 topics.
And absolutely future top 10. That's where I think top 10 Easter eggs came from, wasn't it?
I think so.
I think it was from Amber.
We rely on you guys to keep your eyes, on the prize and let us know what's happening in the community. And so a lot of the things that we talk about on the show, you guys are told us about.
Yeah, we have a show topics channel, and that's exactly where we put those things. That said, Katie N. McWitt, congratulations to yourself. You get a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com, and thanks, of course, to Cool Stuff for sponsoring that. But we're going to get started with our top 10 spirits. There were a lot of good spirits.
Over 400?
Yeah.
And gather it,
yeah, and they're not like all like terrible, and then there's like the 20 good ones. Like no, they're just everywhere.
I started off at 29. I had 29 on my first initial like rough going through all of them, and then I whittled it down to 19, and then oh man, the last couple were kind of painful.
It was rough going with a couple of the creature type lists. I remember having trouble with angels, finding enough angels. Warriors, even though there's a bunch of them, a lot of them are kind of garbage. Spirits had a lot of all-stars, and so this was a fun list to put together.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get started here with number 10. Ruben, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is a card that is in the Legacy Cube. It saw a lot of constructed play across a number of formats, including in Modern, which it was in the Spirits deck, I suppose. And it is an effect that doesn't come along very often, and when it does, it tends to be very popular. My number 10 is Selfless Spirit. Selfless Spirit is a colorless and a white spirit cleric from Eldritch Moon. It's a 2/1 with flying and has sacrifice Selfless Spirit. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. A very indelible part of that Spirits deck in Modern, being able to protect from things like Anger of the Gods and other wrath effects. Just a great way to protect your team. Dauntless Escort was a very popular card that cost 3 mana and didn't have evasion. This followed it up and had the same effect for a cheaper cost, and it was able to attack in the air for 2. Really popular in that Spirits deck, as we mentioned, and just a great card.
I remember this back in the Coco days in Standard. This was something that you could Coco into, which was terrifying. They played it. I think it was around when the rally decks were out. I believe.
Possibly.
I think that might have been like the end of a Standard, start of a new one. But the ability to not pay for it is really what pushes it over the top. And then you pair it up with a bunch of lords. It changes the combat math where you have to wonder, do I want to waste a kill spell on this insignificant thing when you get right down to it, and the ways that it protects the team and can become a threat on its own with enough lords. It's a very scary card.
I mean, this is the hate bear essentially du jour, where they play Wrath, you answer it. Now being able to put it into play instant speed, thanks Collected Company
or Aether Vial, just vialing it in is annoying.
Yeah, that's one of those things. But
this was obviously the biggest impact in the Collected Company Bant decks in Standard, and then later in the blue-white aggressive strategies started picking it up as well. There was a Flash deck that was popular for a while, or Azorius aggro, but just an amazing card.
Nice. Aaron, what's your number 10?
A lot of the cards on my list are commander cards, and this is a card. This is the one that got away. This is a card that I discovered a long time ago, and I had wanted to build a commander deck around so badly, but it's such a narrow card, and the downside, if you will, of the card affects it too. And so the deck building requirements are really, really stringent. I've tried going on Tapped Out. I've had people send me their lists. I've hated them all, but I still have a copy of this card in one of my deck boxes on my shelf above my bed. And I keep every spoiler season, I always go straight to the mono black section, and I hope that one day I will have enough cards to make Hirobi Death's Wail a thing. So Hirobi Death's Wail is 2 colorless and 2 black champions of Kamigawa. Hey, Evan. See you. Legendary creature spirit 4/4 flying. Whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, destroy that creature, which is hilarious. You can play stupid things. You can play like the rod that gives things banding, and you're like, whoa, banding, just explodes. And so you can play really stupid things like Walking Ballista, but you also find yourself playing a lot of really bad cards just to be able to get the Hirobi effect going. And you can also, Hirobi can backfire. Your opponent can use it on Hirobi and just be like, I'm going to give it +0/+4, and then it explodes. And so you have to find a way to protect it. If you go through Gatherer, there are very few things in black that are good that also have a targeting clause to them. So you're often playing just bad cards just to make it work. Sure. And Lord knows I love playing bad cards, obviously, but you got to have another game plan. And so one day, I hope that I will find a Hirobi deck, and it just hasn't happened yet.
So it's really interesting to take this card, which first of all, A+ for Kamigawa.
It's the Spirits list. We're going to have a lot of Kamigawa. I'm pretty sure.
Good. I'm excited.
If we didn't, then
okay. I'm late to the party on this.
Commentary.
I'm late to the party on this one. I just realized, Ruben, Kamigawa. A lot of the spirits are called Kamis. I literally
mind blown.
Holy cow!
Connection made.
Oh my gosh! It's fun. It's fun to look at sort of the tools that people use, because through EDHREC or EDHREC.com, you can go through and say, here's a legend, how do people use it? And people use like Squeeze Toy is a fun one.
Sure.
Liquid metal coating.
Sure.
Is nice.
Yeah.
Tooth of Chisgoria.
Tooth and scale of Chisgoria. Yes. Both would work.
Yep. Both would work.
The dumbest ways to kill creatures. Yeah.
The stupidest artifacts that say tap, do something irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly.
The number one card in all of these decks, at least, percentage wise, 57% of them run Staff of Nin.
Sure.
Where you draw extra cards and you just bing,
great.
Bing, kill it.
Card
bing,
sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's great. Well, look, I don't have a number 10 because it's higher on someone else's list. Oof. So that's unfortunate.
Evan and I have a number of hires between us. Aaron, only one, I think.
Yeah, only the one. Well,
it's going to be a very spirited discussion with myself tonight.
Very nice. Let's move on here to number 9. Speaking of, Aaron, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is a card that I discovered back when I played quite a bit of Standard. I started playing Standard again during Return to Ravnica Block, which was one of my favorite Standards, and I'm sure many of you would agree. And cards like this, effects like this, we often see in Black. A lot of people don't realize this, but Black is very good at making lots of mana. You have cards like Cabal Coffers, you have Mages to the Cabal, Mages to the Coffers, I think. You have the new Stronghold that was recently printed in Dominaria. You know, when people think of ramp, they often think of green naturally, but Black can do some tricks too. And so this is a card where if you really want to make a lot of Black mana, you definitely want this guy in your corner. And number 9 is Cryptghast. So Cryptghast is from Gatecrash. It is a creature type spirit, power 2, toughness 2, 3 colorless and a black. It has extort. Whenever you cast a spell, you can pay white or black. If you do, each opponent, that's each opponent for our friends playing Two-Headed Giant or Commander out there, loses 1 life and you gain that much life. Whenever you tap a swamp for mana, add black to your mana pool. So you want to pair this with something like Urborg that makes all of your lands swamps, and you can do ridiculous things like with that. You can even pair it with Cabal Coffers and have a really, really good time. But this is a really great creature. It's a body, so you can swing with it, you can block with it. If you have any sort of swamps out, you're probably going to be able to pay for the extort, so it kind of fuels itself in a way. I love this card. If I'm playing any sort of mono black strategy, I'm probably playing Cryptghast, and it's just great.
Well, I mean, with Wizards having sort of taken Black, like Black used to be like the super fast mana, like Dark Ritual was just like the thing, and they were never going to get rid of Dark Ritual, and yada yada yada, and they finally did. And then they kind of started creeping towards it with the Cabal spells and whatnot. And then later you have like Cryptghast. I remember even at the time I was like, wow, they gave like a mana flare to Black. This is cool, I guess, you know, to think of Black as like the big mana color, but you can embrace it and you can build decks around it, and that's sweet.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a $4 rare that sees no constructed play for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really popular EDH card, of course, because of the extort. All the cards with extort are amazing in all the multiplayer formats. In addition to being able to pump out those giant black spells, your Consume Spirits, your Maga Trader to Mortals, your giant artifacts that cost 7 or whatever. It's just a really powerful card.
Very nice. All right, Ruben, what's number 9?
My number 9 is one of the only hires on my list.
Right, one of the only of the 4. Got it. Okay. All right. So my number 9, my first one on the list I can actually talk about, is a really fun one, because in the world that it showed up, and particularly me being just as versed and as deep into the constructed world of Magic as I was, I got to see this card from FNMs to US Nationals and how it affected gameplay when someone would ask the other person, is this trigger going to resolve?
Oh no.
Has the trigger resolved? And you're like, what? And you go, well, I've got this Demigod of Revenge, you see. And I've got this other one, you see. And they ain't legendary. Oh. And let me just read you the card. Demigod of Revenge was a rare from Shadowmoor. It was 5 red or black mana. It was hybrid. 5 red or black mana for a 5/4 spirit avatar with flying and haste. And when you play, aka when you cast this spell, which is the current wording, when you cast this spell, return all cards named Demigod of Revenge from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, if you were to counter the spell and the trigger's on the stack, the trigger resolves and you get both of them back if there was one in your graveyard. So you had to be real careful about saying, counter, trigger resolves, counter that. So
I had this happen one time because I knew that this was a thing, and I always would say trigger resolves, counter it, trigger, whatever. Right. But by the end of Worlds in Memphis, I was a puddle of garbage with no intelligence left. And I was playing against Dave Irvine, if you remember Dave Irvine. Yeah. And he played a Demigod of Revenge, and I was like, all right, cryptic command. He's like, all right, well, trigger resolves. I was like, I said the trigger, what? No, I didn't. And by that point, my brain was so mush. I was like, all right, well, if the judge comes over and gives this to you, I am leaving the event site because I'm ready to go to bed. And so so the trigger resolves. And I said, all right, thank you. And I picked up my cards and I left.
Ruben exit stage left.
I did not sign the match slip. I left. Wow. I was like, all right, I'm going to bed. Good luck. I didn't realize I didn't sign the match slip. I just was so tired. But yeah, that was not a feel good experience with Demigod of Revenge.
Yeah, Demigod of Revenge is one of those cards that I think Wizards didn't clearly think about how this is going to work particularly in the competitive space. Like, when you're at home, whatever. But like when thousands of dollars are on the line and all of a sudden you care about the stack and how the stack works and how the triggers work and how the trigger's done.
I didn't even know that was a thing until you guys brought this up just now. And I've seen that card at like F&M and I've always thought it was cute, but I had no idea it could be used like that. Like, wow.
Oh yeah, it got dirty.
This was also one of the key pieces of the all-in red deck that was popular in Old Extended for a little while because 5 red mana comes from Seething Song, so you could get like a turn 2 demigod.
Oh my God.
Rashad Miller, top 16 Pro Tour Berlin with all in red, featuring 4 Demigod of Revenges, among other things.
Nice. Well, that card is super sweet. But we got to keep moving here to number 8. Ruben, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is a spirit, but for some reason, it sees most of its success in Merfolk decks. Over its history, it has done very well in Merfolk, including winning Grand Prix, winning legacy tournaments, and because it is very good at protecting other very small attacking blue creatures. My number 8 is Kira, Great Glass Spinner.
Yeah.
Kira, Great Glass Spinner is a colorless blue for a legendary creature spirit. It is a 2/2 with flying, and it has creatures you control have. Whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn, counter that spell or ability. Very good at protecting your creatures from, everything. Lightning Bolt, Swords to Plowshares, Fatal Push, any of your removal spells. If your opponents don't have a Mother of Runes to be, or like a pinger to be able to ping off the first target or get rid of stuff with Umezawa's Jite counters is another popular way to get the overshield off of it. It's very difficult to deal with. Very popular in the Devotion Merfolk kind of decks, being able to get more Master of Waves tokens or turn on Thassa. Dropping this on turn 3 or with an Aether Vial is just an incredible beating, particularly in those Merfolk decks.
This card has driven me in the tank more times than I can count. I have considered it completely irrational lines of play. Like, I'll be sitting there and it's like, okay, if I conflagrate this, if I dark like that, Judge, does this work with this? And the judge is like, no. And I'm like, damn it. I'm like,
right.
This card is frustrating as hell.
This card was, at least back in when I paid just even a smidge of attention to Commander, and this was many years ago, was like, this was one of those like signal cards of like, you're kind of a prick. You're like, I'm playing the prick deck. And they're like, okay, you're going to be that guy. They're going to kill you first. There are
cards that mean certain things when you see them played. You're right.
It just felt like a thing. But there was a whole mechanic in Betrayers of Kamigawa about creatures that had this sort of shield of a one-time, which was weird and okay, fine.
I mean, most of them were balanced. I mean, Jetting Glass Kite, I think, was the 4/4 for 6 with flying. That was fine. It's really good in like uncommon cube. He's the only one that really busted it open.
Yeah. This was certainly the winner, as it were, and they aggressively cost it, particularly for the time. For the time.
Ironically enough, though, you mentioned earlier that she's like an honorary merfolk. Ironically enough, Spirits doesn't even play her.
Yeah,
like the banned Spirits decks that were running around and still run around, not even no.
It's just the rate's not good enough anymore.
But Merfolk never leaves home without her, which I think is great.
I mean, these days, you'd literally just chop that generic mana right off the front of the cost and be like, this is where we are.
Spell Captain or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. And of course, most recently, we had this line of text on, I think it was called Glyph Seeker or Glyph Keeper something like that, which was a Sphinx from Amonkhet that had 2 bodies. So you had to waste 4 removal spells on it.
Gross. That's gross. Yeah. So that said, Aaron, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is the only higher on my list.
Wow, the one and only. Well, let's get to mine right quick here. This card is weird. Like, this card is super duper weird. I love how weird it is. And it's one of those cards where, I was trying to think of my list in terms of like, the all-time greats, the cards I would like to show to people when they say, what are the top 10 spirits of Magic? What represents them? And I'm like, you gotta see this thing. It's just freaky weird. It makes no sense. There was a card in Shadowmoor called Swans of Bryn Argyle, and it's just the weirdest thing ever. It's a blue-white 2 hybrid Azorius mana and 2 generic mana, so 4 mana total, for a 4/3 rare bird spirit with flying. And if a source would deal damage to Swans of Bryn Argol, prevent that damage. The source's controller draws cards equal to the damage prevented this way. So,
yeah.
In comes a combo deck where you're able to play, what was it? The Seismic Assault?
Seismic Assault.
Seismic Assault to target your own swans to then draw 2 cards, ideally to keep hitting it with the lands, and eventually you'll have so many lands that you can throw those at your opponent because you've drawn your deck.
And combos specifically with one of Aaron's favorite lands, Dakmor Salvage, because you replace one of the draws with a dredge, always getting a land. Mm-hmm. So you draw a card, get back Dakmor Salvage. And so you are able to mill 2, draw a card as often as you would like to fill your hand with things, and then throw all those lands at your opponent. I played this in a grinder at Nationals and defeated one Mr. Evan Irwin in that grinder with this stupid deck. This deck was wild and silly, and Swans of Bryn Argol is one of the weirdest. Like, I don't even know what the Swans lore is in relevance to Shadowmoor or anything, but this is definitely a weirdo among weirdos.
It was reprinted in a recent Modern Master set, and for about a week or 2 afterwards, you were seeing it everywhere. Like, people kept trying to make it happen again, and thank God it didn't, because they were spreading their own things. They were anger of the godsing their own things. It was just lunacy.
The card just, I mean, it causes really weird play patterns and just changes everything that you're going to do. Let's move on to number 7. I don't have one. Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is higher on someone else's list. I've got a number of hires this week.
Oh, so do I. I also have a hire for my number 7. So, Aaron, what is your number 7?
My number 7 is a card that many Commander players feel should be banned. And I just didn't get it. You know, I am a dirty net decker when it comes to Commander. I am not a brewer in the least bit. I tend to get my list from like Tapped Out, Commander's Quarters. And so when Muldrotha first came out, I just plucked a list I found off of somewhere. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to build this list. And this card was in there. And I thought I knew why it was there. And I remember I was playing at my local game store, and I played Muldrotha, and I played this card, and the table groaned. And I thought I knew why they were groaning. And I was like, oh, it just means you're not going to be able to kill her. And they were like, do you not know what it does? And I was like, no. I will tell you. My number 7 is Deadeye Navigator. So Deadeye Navigator is 4 colorless and 2 blue. It's from Avacyn Restored. It's a spirit, 5 power and 5 toughness, which is fine. It has Soul Bond. You may pair this creature with another unpaired creature. When either enters the battlefield, they remain paired for as long as you control both of them. And as long as Deadeye Navigator is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has 1 in a blue. Exile this creature and then return it to the battlefield under your control. This is an incredibly frustrating card to play with. It's a form of removal insurance, where, you know, if that blue player has lots of mana up, you better have enough kill spells to keep, you know, to react to things, to be able to kill it. But what I didn't know is if you play this with Muldrotha, it resets her claws. Yep. So like you play your 1 artifact, you play your 1 enchantment, and you blink her, and then whoop, I'll play another artifact, I'll play another enchantment. I had no idea. And so you took an already busted commander, you made her even more busted. And as I talked to more and more commander players, a lot of people feel like this is a very powerful, too good for commander card. And I had never heard of that before. And so I definitely gained a new appreciation for that card. I'm like, wow, that's gross.
Yeah.
I mean, well, look, Avacyn Restored was not the greatest Magic set, okay? And Soul Bond is not the greatest mechanic, but if you let something else blink itself forever, that's pretty insane. This always kind of starts cropping up every time the Commander players get near their ban list, and they're like, are we still fine with this ridiculous blue creature doing ridiculous things? And it's like, well, I guess.
Yeah, it does do broken things, particularly with the, Peregrine Drake style creatures that can untap a bunch of lands and let you get infinite mana. Of course, this is a play on the Ferryman, the boatman who takes you down to hell, and just a really powerful, cool card.
Very nice. All right, let's move on here to number 6. Ruben, what is your number 6?
My number 6, I was a little surprised it didn't appear in our a different episode of Top 10 Creature Types. I don't think it did, if my recollection is correct, but it did make an appearance here. It has a Pro Tour win with Gadiel's Lifer's ridiculous Gifts Ungiven 4-color Hanakami combo thing. Hanakami, also a spirit, but might not make an appearance in this list. I don't know. But this is a different spirit from the same deck. This one is a Dragon Spirit, one of the most popular casual cards of all time. Was in many cubes for a very long time as well, and still commands a good price tag, even though it's been reprinted a number of times. My number 6 is Kokusho, the Evening Star. 4 colorless black gets you a 5/5 flying legendary creature, Dragon Spirit. And when Kokusho, the Evening Star, dies, each opponent loses 5 life. You gain life equal to the life lost in this way. Was quite powerful, of course, in that deck with cards like Soulless Revival and Stir the Grave, which Gadiel's Lifer used to win Pro Tour Philadelphia in 2005. You combo with Recurring Nightmare in your cubes. You combo with other sacrifice outlets and other reanimation outlets. And it's also just a 5/5 flyer for 6. Like, that's just good enough. Reprinted in the original Modern Masters, it was one of the cards you wanted to open at the first Grand Prix Las Vegas, just because it's a ridiculous flying monster. Also was in From the Vault Dragons. It's a very iconic card, originally from Champions. So iconic, in fact, that it was in Iconic Masters.
So iconic that when we did the top 10 Dragons list, it was my number 2.
There we
People
go.
became interested in it when the new Tesa came out, because you get double the death triggers. And
right.
So, yeah, you can do all sorts of dumb things with it.
Yeah, at Modern Masters, it was a mythic. At one point at Cool Stuff, we did an auction where we auctioned off a box of Modern Masters, and I got one. I got a Kokusho, the Evening Star, as a mythic. It doesn't pull that excitement like it used to.
No,
for the mythic.
It doesn't rustle your jimmies quite like it used to. And the fact that they printed the whole cycle of the Dragon Spirit Legends was a problem. And so you had Jugon and Ryusei in packs at Mythic as well.
Right. It was just awkward because, like, Wizards feels, I think they do, because they've certainly done this, they feel obligated that every time they put one of these in a set, all 5 got to be there.
Right.
So Iconic Masters, they all got new artwork, and it looks great, and downgraded back to rare where they were to start with. So, okay, that's fine, I guess. Either way, Aaron, what's your number 6?
My number 6 has become one of my favorite commanders. I love playing this deck. I have so much fun with it. It's also my most competitive deck. I have crushed more pods with this deck than any of my other commander decks. I have so much fun playing it. I always find new broken things to do with it. I enjoy seeing other people get clued into it as well. It was recently reprinted, and so I was proud to see other people say, I think I might want to build a commander deck with this, and I gave them my list. And so it's always great to welcome people to the fold. My number 6 is Shirei. She's as caretaker.
Nice.
Shirei is from Betrayers of Kamigawa. It's 4 colorless and a black, legendary creature, spirit 2/2. Whenever a creature with power 1 or less is put into your graveyard from play, you may return that creature card to play under your control at end of turn if Shirei is still in play. There are so many ways that you can build this deck. If you literally just go through Gather and you find 0 to 1 power creatures, it's so customizable. You can do it with just Shadowborn Apostles. Think about that one. And then you sacrifice them all. They all come back. I have done stupid things with this. I have found so many clever ways to win. I have survived Armageddons with this card where it's like, fine, I'll just loop this 51 times and kill you. I don't need no lands.
Right.
I love just so much about it. I love the subtlety of it where, you're playing just crappy black creatures and no one's going to stop you because you're playing Dusk Zealot or something. And then finally, like, the gear starts to click and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it makes me so happy, and I just love it, and it's just everything I want to be doing.
Absolutely super unique effect, and the fact that it's been most recently printed as an uncommon, if I'm not mistaken, means that a whole new generation gets to enjoy the joys of
it's so much fun. And it's affordable. I think I paid like $100 for mine, and I'm crushing pods everywhere, so it's great.
Nice. Well, look, I can say nothing else that Aaron is consistent. Yeah. Because for the top 10 Ultimate Masters cards, this was her number 6.
There you go.
It's my boo. And it's become something I've known for, where like people, I will play with people and like, oh, she's got her Shirei deck. Y'all are on notice. And so I just love it. It makes me happy.
That's terrific. All right. So for my number 6 here, we have a card that does get tossed around when commander ban lists and things show up, because this is a casual all-star. That's where this card has always sort of been and stayed, and they most recently printed it in Battle Bond, and it's a $10 bill. No matter where you find it, whether it's Legion's 9th, 10th, or Battle Bond, Seedborn Muse is hot fire. This card is super duper good. It is 2 green, 3 generic mana for a rare 2/4 spirit. And it has just one little tiny whiny sentence that says, untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step.
So I first discovered this card with the Muldrotha list that I mentioned a little bit earlier. This was in there, and it was $30 at the time. And I like budget Commander. I try not to spend a lot of money on Commander. I try not to spend more than $100 on a deck if I could, but this was like a third of my budget. And I didn't get it. I'd never played the card before. I was like, why is this $30? Like, I'll use Awakening. I'm not doing this. And so I played on Magic Online, where the cards are very cheap, thanks to our sponsor, Card Hoarder. And so I put a little Seedborn Muse in there. And once I got to play with it, I was like, oh, it's a lot. And I got it. I finally got it. And then thank God for Battle Bond, because now it's like a $5 card. So I'm telling you, if you're ever playing Commander and you're playing green, use this card because it will change your game significantly.
Oh no, it's back to $10. Just so
really?
Sure. Yeah.
This is my number 8. So
this was my number 7.
So good.
Wow, very nice. Well,
card is absolutely ridiculous. A very similar card, Prophet of Krufix, is banned in the format, so it's no wonder that this is always on the watch lists.
Yeah, always. All right. Let's move on here to number 5. Yet again, the song and the dance. I ain't got one. It's higher on somebody else's list. Ruben, what you got for number 5?
My number 5 is another of the cards that was really popular in the Bant Company decks and also in the Azorius aggro decks. So it was fought right alongside my number 10, Selfless Spirit. And the other notable spirit in that deck was Spell Queller. Mm-hmm. Colorless white-blue gives you a 2/3 spirit with both flash and flying. And when Spell Queller enters the battlefield, exile target spell with converted mana cost of 4 or less. And when it leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner may cast that card without paying its mana cost. 2/3 flash flying is already like kind of good enough in a lot of circumstances, not to mention the fact that it's a pseudo counter spell, certainly able to protect you, at least delay Airtie's Meddling kind of style of counter spell. Not only that, but it was able to deal with cards that couldn't be countered. So you could get rid of Exquisite Firecrafts and Abrupt Decays and things along those lines as well. Extremely potent, powerful card, being able to come in, not just for casting its cost, but of course off of Collected Company, made it spectacular.
Has seen play in just about every format. It was powerful in Standard. It's obviously seen play in the Modern Spirits deck. Vintage Spirits, they
like it too.
They like it too. The Landstill decks, the Standstill decks love it. I do believe it sometimes sees play in Miracles, or depending on the meta, or the Stoneblade decks. Wow. I mean, when you have a card that is so powerful that can be played in older formats like that, where the threshold is so high, you can't deny that. And just what a card.
There have been a couple of recent Vintage tournaments that used it as a survival of the fittest target.
Absolutely.
Very nice. I mean, this was my number 10. Spell Queller just as a card on rate, 3 mana, 2/3 flash flyer, already limited all-star. Fantastic. Yeah. And then it Oblivion Rings a spell, and it's just it doesn't matter if it's uncounterable. It doesn't matter. This spell can't be countered. Whatever, it can be exiled to the Spell Queller. This is one of those creatures. This one's like sort of bellwether type creatures of, when did creatures start to get really cranked? And you're like, this is one where you can say it, like they pushed boundaries in ways that they never pushed boundaries when it came to Spell Queller. Wow. All right. Let's move over to number 5 for Aaron. What you got?
I mentioned Return to Ravnica Standard being one of my favorite standards of all time, and this card is a big reason why. I will never forget the day that Gavin Verhey previewed this card on the mothership. I was at work, and I took one look at this card, and not only did the art completely win me over, the flavor won me over. I knew I had never seen anything like this, and I knew that I had to play this card until the format rotated. My number 5 is Obsidian Ghost Council. So Gatecrash, legendary creature, Spirit Advisor, 1 colorless, 2 white and 2 black, 5 power, 5 toughness. When Obsidian Ghost Council enters the battlefield, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. I'm in. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile Obsidian. If you do, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next upkeep. It haste. There was a lot of sorcery speed removal at the time, and the instant speed removal that we had just couldn't deal with an Obsidian. So there were so many games where this would just run away with the game, where you would stick this, and sometimes you'd even bash in for 5 too every once in a while. But I just remember those days of those life pads of the long rows of like 2, 2, 2, and your opponent just having nothing against you. And I just love this. I love like the boo diddly aspect. If you played Mario, turn around, it disappears. And it's like, I just love this. I love the Obzadot so much. Pour one out for the Obzadot. They're not with us anymore. This was the second iteration of them. I think it's better than the first. Feel free to
on that.
I mean, yeah.
It's debatable because both versions of the Ghost Council had powerful decks.
Yeah,
right.
Ghost Dad, of course, was quite powerful back in the day. And then there were many decks that used Obzadat. It was a Mirror Breaker in the Esper mid-range kind of.
You can do dumb things with Erebos, Goryo's Vengeance.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have a place in my heart for this card.
I mean, this card, for what it's worth, I recall a lot of people going like, "Is this card any good?" And it's just like, yeah dude, this card's ridiculous.
Right. It's a 5/5 for 5 in white that can't be wrathed. Or white-black, yeah.
I mean, these days we got Mortify. They didn't bring back Mortify when we went back to Ravnica for the first time. So, we didn't have an awesome, easy answer to just get rid of that thing.
The best decks at the time were Jeskai, and the answers that they had were Burn Spells and Azorius Charm. So you could just stick it, and of course, Supreme Verdict. So you could just stick an Obzadot and then wait 10 turns because there was no way for them to do anything about it.
Right.
Good.
And Detention Sphere. Just a whole list of things that couldn't deal with an Obzadot.
Right. Detention Sphere was like the premier removal of the format. Yeah. And nope, just couldn't get it. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's move on here to number 4. Ruben, what's your number 4?
My number 4, I got chided because it was not in a previous list, but it is going to be on this list. My number 4 is Eidolon of the Great Revel.
Look at this, just straight to the punch.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, Eidolon of the Great Revel is straight to the punch. It's a 2/2 for red. It's an enchantment creature spirit from not the greatest set ever, Journey into Nyx, and of course was reprinted in Masters 25. Whenever a player casts a spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, Eidolon of the Great Revel deals 2 damage to that player. It was reminiscent of Pyrostatic Pillar, but now Eidolon of the Great Revel is the go-to. You don't reference any other card. It is the Eidolon effect. And it is a staple of modern burn. It was a staple of standard burn as well and other aggressive strategies. Just a spectacularly good card.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, because, rocks were soft, I remember playing Pyrostatic Pillar in Extended and just ruining my opponent's day because they were playing Storm, and I was just like, turn 2 Pyrostatic Pillar after sideboard. That was that was game 2, and then on turn 2.
This is a Pyrostatic Pillar that's your main deck, though.
Yeah, that you attack with, and is insane. This was my number 7.
Yeah, I've had some interesting games with this card. I remember when I first started playing Ad Nauseam, I thought that Angel's Grace beat it. And so I remember being at like 2 and being like, Angel's Grace, ow. And then I die. I remember it's also sometimes fun to make burn players sometimes lose to their own Eidolons, or like you're playing a really grindy post-sideboard game and it's like, all right, what are you at? Yeah, you're going to take that. And then you get closer and you get closer and they have to make that choice of sort of like the Dark Confidant choice of like they start attacking with it, hoping to God you kill it. It's like, nope, I'm cool. I remember I had a game once when I was playing Modern Dredge and like they had Rest in Peace out and I had hard cast so many things and I was winning the race and I finally drew the Nature's Claim and I was like, I'll let you have that. Because I knew that if I gained the life and took the 2, no way. And I ended up grinding him out and it felt amazing.
Wow. Yeah. Like getting sort of like Eidolon locked or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you can get to that point where you're just like, oh God, I can't play.
I'm locked under my own Eidolon. Yeah.
I can play like one more spell and then that's it, and it's sweet. But that card was a bright spot in a bad set.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on here to my number 4. I love my number 4. I have played with it for years and years and years. I had a sweet version of it in my cube. I had it there from the day it existed to the day I sold it. This card was there. It's powerful. It's cool. It's still powerful and cool. It's like $4, even though you print it like 4 or 5 times in various different ways. It's been in Commander sets. It's been a Judge card. It's been in Vintage Masters online. Eternal Masters in paper. Commander Anthology has shown you what Karmic Guide can do.
Sure.
Karmic Guide is 2 white, 3 generic mana for a 2/2 rare angel spirit with flying and protection from black. It has Echo of 2 white, 3 generic mana at the beginning of your upkeep. If this came under your control since the beginning of your last upkeep, sacrifice it unless you pay its Echo cost. When Karmic Guide enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's what it does. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
There are some unique things about Karmic Guide that I will now point out. Among others, this card was errated at one point, where it had to be played from your hand instead of cheated into play. They gave a number of these cards errata.
All of them did. All of them, I think.
All of them did. Right. A lot of them were things like treachery, the
whale.
The whale, great whale. And this one as well, although this was not a permanent change. And because it was not a permanent change, it, of course, later became a part of Flash Hulk combo, where Protean Hulk would die and you would go through some weird amalgamations of combinations of cards. Karmic Guide would get back a thing, and then Body Double would copy a Karmic Guide and get back a thing, and then somehow you deal a bunch of damage, and then it would win a Grand Prix and immediately get banned thereafter. Karmic Guide is a really cool card, really flavorful card, tons of fun, in addition to being broken, and also from one of my favorite sets, Urza's Legacy.
I mean, blink effects are amazing with this, trying to cheat it into play. You have...
this and Revelark.
Revelark was what I was trying to think of. Yeah, Revelark was insane with this in the cube, which was great. Like, early picking a Karmic Guide is just pure value, and you can do some silly things that are awesome and fun. That's great. Aaron, what is your number 4?
Ruben, your Eidolon was nice and all, but I'm going to have to mention a good one. So people sometimes think of me as being like the dredge girl or the graveyard girl, but you guys might not know this, but I love an Enchantress deck. I first discovered this style of play when Constellation came around in Theros. I was a big fan of the black-green Constellation, and then right around rotation, I played the green-white Constellation and won my first and only game day with green-white enchantments thanks to this card. And I'll never forget, I was very sad about this card rotating. People were like, you know you can play Enchantress in like other formats, right? And I was like, and then someone introduced me to like Legacy and Modern, and it's never been the same since. My number 4 is Eidolon of Blossoms. So Eidolon of Blossoms is 2 colorless and 2 green. It's an enchantment creature spirit, 2 power, 2 toughness with Constellation. Whenever Eidolon of Blossoms or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. This card gets out of hand quickly. You would play this with Whip of Erebos and be like, Whip a Doomwake Giant, trigger, enchantment trigger, draw a card. You play just you create this engine which just gets out of control so quickly to the point where you're casting things you don't even care about. You're like, this targeting, I don't care that one. Cool, draw a card. And so you pair 2 together. It's obnoxious. I had so much fun with this, and it does see play in Legacy Enchantress. You know, you have your 4 Argothian Enchantress. This is usually Enchantress 5 or 6, so you can tutor with Green Sun Zenith. It's got a 2 body, got a little bit of body on it. It's fine, but you haven't lived until like the engine is working and you're just drawing and training and doom waking. Oh my god, it feels so good.
Wow. The EDH reg discusses Kestia the Cultivator as the number 1, 91% of the 134 decks. Has this in it somewhere. That is a legendary enchantment creature nymph that can bestow. Not going to explain what bestow is for 6 mana, but it bestows and gives them a +4/+4. But whenever an enchanted creature or enchantment creature you control attacks, you draw a card. So it kind of works. I also love how, in the lexicon of Magic, certain words are just, they're just sort of, they're linchpins of things that mean stuff. Lotus, Mox. Well, the word blossoms has only been on 2 cards ever.
But Enchantress is pretty universal.
Right. Yeah. But there's only been Wall of Blossoms and Eidolon of Blossoms.
So they draw cards.
Right. So if it's a Blossoms, it's going to be green and it's going to draw a card in some fashion. And I think that's cool. I love that.
If it's a Blossoms.
Well, again, it's very specific. You're
right.
So, which I think is neat. But if something is blank blossoms or of blossoms, you know how that's going to work in some fashion. And I love that. Just like if I say sort of X and Y, you're going to know the template as to how that's supposed to work. That said, let's move on here to number 3. Ruben, what's number 3?
My number 3 is higher on someone else's list.
Daggers. Aaron, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is a card that brings me so much joy. If you're playing any sort of broken deck, you're probably playing this card. It sees play in mono red prison decks. It sees play in Grishelbrand, Belcher, Ad Nauseam, and Modern. It is a great card that you can use to bluff counter spells. If somebody's trying to get you with like a spike or a daze or any sort of mana leak, you can use this to like get your way around it. And sometimes if push comes to shove, you can even just cast it and get in there. My number 3, Simian Spirit Guide. So Simian Spirit Guide is some planar chaos. It's a creature type 8 spirit, 2 power and 2 toughness, 2 colorless and then red. You could remove Simian Spirit Guide in your hand from the game and add red to your mana pool. This is a very important part of modern Ad Nauseam. The whole point is you want to draw your entire deck with Ad Nauseam and then exile 3 of these to cast Lightning Storm. Sometimes you can just keep them in your hand. Somebody tries to get you with like a taxing effect or something, and you just, whoop, there's my 1. Can I win now? You can use this to cheat out a Blood Moon on turn 1. Just be like, whoop, whoop, Blood Moon. I've used this in Living End. Again, they don't think you have anything. You can do an instant speed, Violent Outburst, whoop, Violent Outburst. It's hilarious. You can use it for fair reasons, or you can use it as a way to bluff, as it's so fun, and has even been talked about as being ban worthy. There's a lot of talk in Modern about how fast mana is a problem. People love to talk about Mox Opal and this card, and they say that it just shouldn't be possible to do what Simian Spirit Guide does, and it'll be a very sad day if they did do anything about it. I don't think they will, but I've had a lot of fun with this card.
I mean, this was my number 5.
This was my number 9.
Nice.
I lumped it in with the other spirit guide as well.
Don't forget the flavor text. The flavor text is from the Jaya's. All my spells smell like burnt hair lately.
The original flavor text is pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, the follow up in flavor text in Master 25 wasn't as cute. I like the burnt hair. This card breaks the system of mana. The original Elvish Spirit Guide broke it, but no one really cared and ever really used Elvish Spirit Guide very much. But Simian Spirit Guide has been used to its fullest to try to do really dumb, unfair things as soon as possible. And personally, I don't necessarily like these type of effects in competitive play. I just think fast mana is broken. Fast mana has always been broken. It's too good for free.
The decks that are using Simian Spirit Guide in Modern right now are the canister Peter Glukowski decks, right? They're not the prison decks. They're the crazy draw your library, cast a Seismic Assault, throw all my lands at you, or cast a Lightning Storm and throw all my lands.
Play Magic to feel something, damn it.
Yes, you do, and I do as well, and
Listen,
it's great.
I love me a Simian Spirit Guide. I've cast many a turn 1 Blood Moon. But
I draw the line of casting them. I have only ever cast 1 in my entire life.
I've cast a lot of them.
That was because Mr. Labufu made me, and I clipped that moment because it was very distressing.
I've attacked. I went. One of my favorite matches I ever played was I chained Imperial recruiters and then got a Simian Spirit Guide and then just was attacking for 6.
That's what the modern Ad Nauseam mirror is all about. You cast it like savages and then get in there, and I'm like, nope, I won't do it.
Cast it like savages. Yeah. I mean, that's very fitting for the card. I understand. Wow. But okay, yeah, so that card's really busted, and I will not be surprised at all if they just ban it at some point.
No! Wizards?
Just
don't
saying.
do this.
I wouldn't be surprised.
No.
Right. Well, my number 3 is a very popular, powerful card. Currently, it's about $10 or so because they've only printed it once and then was printed at Mythic. And it was a card that was very powerful in Standard. I can imagine is very popular in the casual decks. I did see it in Modern there for a while, but I don't see it much anymore. And maybe it still is, and I just don't know. But you can't deny the power and really the kind of the coolness factor of Geist of St. Traft. Geist of St. Traft is blue and white and a generic mana for a 2/2 mythic legendary spirit cleric that has hexproof. This creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. Whenever it attacks, you put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Exile that token at end of combat.
Yep.
Innistrad was a lot of things and broke a lot of ground and pushed the power level of things even further. And just like I would say Spellqueller from the follow-up Innistrad block really showed you kind of how we're pushing creatures. Wizards, I really think, said this is how creatures can be. They can be this good, this powerful, 6 damage off of 3 mana creatures on turn 4, where you can't target it and you have to find a way around it.
In blue-white.
This card was frustrating. Like this deck was popular when I came into competitive Magic. And so here I am, it's just my mono black infect deck, whatever. And like you're playing against Delver of Secrets and this, and it was just absurd. Like there were just so many games you were like, why am I here?
it's a tough card, and particularly at the time, this kind of showed where, Wizards was trying to figure out hexproof. They didn't know how hexproof could go, good or bad, how far they should push it, and this was the push. And man, it was completely bonkers in the environment that it had. It was amazing.
And Saint Traff making enough of an impact to get a shout out when we went back to Innistrad. You had the Spear of Saint Traff or Saint Traff, kind of blessing Thalia and Sigarda and giving her a mount so she could fight Bracella. Like, that was really, really cool.
Absolutely. So let's move on here to number 2. I don't have one. It's I would go ahead and put a lunch bet that it's Aaron's number 1. That's my last hire. That said, Ruben, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is also higher, and I would also put a lunch bet that it's Aaron's number 1.
Oh my God, boys, there's enough of me to go around.
Wow.
And my number 3 is Evan's number 1.
Nice. Okay. Well, is there, see also the pre-show. Aaron, what's your number 2?
So they say that you can't know where you're going until you know where you've been. And one of the first lessons I learned when I first started playing Dredge is that, graveyard order, if you're playing older formats, graveyard order matters, which is something I had never really dealt with before. I started off as a standard player. I started off as a modern player. I didn't really think about things like that. When I started playing older formats, that became something that was very important to me. And one of the reasons why graveyard matters is because of my number 2. This is the card that really started it all. If you think of creatures almost like Pokemon, this, I believe, was like the first. This was like the Bulbasaur. This was the first iteration of the cards like this that gave us things like Icarid and gave us other cards like that. My number 2 is Nether Shadow. So Nether Shadow came all the way out in the beginning. I think it was 3rd edition revised.
No, Alpha.
Alpha. Okay. So creature type spirit, 1 power, 1 toughness, summon Shadow, but I believe it was retconned or like it was errated to be a spirit.
It was errated later. Yeah.
It says, if Shadow is in graveyard, this was the original text, if Shadow is in graveyard, because this is how they wrote cards back in the day, with any combination of cards above it that includes at least 3 creatures, it can be returned to play during your upkeep. Shadow can attack on the same turn you summoned or return it to play. Basically, it is haste, and if you have at least 3 or more creatures above it, you can bring it back for free. So your graveyard order matters. You want to make sure that there are always 3 creatures above it, and it just always comes back. This is very popular in the manaless dredge lists, where your deck really doesn't run any lands. You have a critical mass of creatures, so you're very, very likely to have the 3 creatures, but you can sacrifice it, get a lot of bodies, and it just comes back again. Very, very efficient, very simple, very cute, and this is really the one that the creature that started it all.
I mean, started from the very, very beginning. I believe the rule these days is graveyard. The sort of the way it's made up doesn't matter unless you're playing cards of which it matters. Does that make sense?
Most judges, I have had people try to rules lawyer me on that, and most judges will say, like, "Are you running that?" And then they'll look at the opponent and they'll be like, do you have anything against that? And they're like, no. And the judge will be like, carry on. So most of the time it doesn't matter, but every once in a while you get that uppity opponent who tries to do something and most judges will just laugh at you. So
But there is, there was definitely one of the words, that we were talking about earlier in the lexicon is nether. And whether it's sort of Nether Spirit, which showed up in Urza's or Macadian Masks rather, which was pretty cool. And again, it went from the graveyard to play if it's the only creature card in your graveyard. So it's kind of a neat spin on it, which was nice. So we'll move here to number 1. Aaron, let's see if you proved us right. What is your number 1?
I like what I like. I make no illusions of that. You could probably see my number 2 coming and you could probably see my number 1 coming. The fun thing about my number 1 is a lot of people don't realize that it's a spirit. It's a card that we've all seen, whether it's been on our side of the table or whether we faced it. But when you really think about it, when you really read the card, it's actually a spirit. Obviously the creatures I love tend to be very niche, very narrow, but nothing makes me happier than when cards I like become popular in other decks, because I want everyone to enjoy the toys that I like, even if they're not in the decks that I play. My number 1 is Bloodghast. So Bloodghast is 2 black. It was originally printed in Zendikar, and it is a creature type vampire spirit, 2 power, 1 toughness. Bloodghast can't block. Bloodghast has haste as long as an opponent has 10 or less life, and it has landfall. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return Bloodghast from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you're playing any sort of commander decks that require sacrifice fodder, you can just sacrifice this again and again and again. Obviously, this is an important part of modern Dredge. Legacy Dredge. No, sorry, Legacy Dredge doesn't play this. Vintage Dredge plays this. But Hollow One. I mean, nothing made me happier than seeing Black Red Hollow One pick this up. People who would never be caught dead playing a Dredge deck were buying Bloodghast like you wouldn't believe, because they wanted to pair them with Hollow One and with Goblin lore. And so this card is just amazing. I was so hoping they would put this back in with the new Zendikar. They didn't. It's stupid easy to trigger. You can get clever with like your fetches. Timing it at the right time so that, if somebody's playing Anger the Gods, you wait until their end step and bring them all back. You survive board wipes. It's just such a good card. It also can act as removal. There are so many times you just attack, people will block, and then it makes your conflagrates cost less. And it's just a brilliant card from top to bottom. And just, it had to be my favorite spirit.
I mean, it was fairly obvious to me. For what it's worth, but I don't think a lot of people saw your number 2 coming. But with that said, I mean, Bloodghast was ridiculous. Landfall, like Landfall is so good. It's starting to make me angry that they don't put it back in standard. Like you're pissing me off, guys. It's literally, it's one of the most amazing mechanics. Have you ever in your life wished that there was a land on top of your library? No, except this amazing mechanic, which blew my mind, and we haven't gotten it back since.
Well, we do have that weird little druid that like proliferates, which kind of has like landfall-ish.
Right. Ish, right? Ish. Give me more than ish. Come on. Like there was a really cool thing there. Anyway. Bloodghast
this was, of course, my number 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is I think that this is the only spirit that I could find that both has a Pro Tour win and is in the cube.
Sounds about right. So this card in and of itself is just an absolute all-star. It's like $17 or whatever. Printed in Zendikar and Iconic Masters, and that's it, at least as of this recording. But that is really sweet. And gets us, so that's your number. And so this is where Ruben, you have a number 1?
I have a number 1.
Oh, go for it.
I think Evan and I both got cute in similar ways.
We got cute. I was about to start the got cute speech, but I was like, oh, wait a minute. I don't actually know Ruben's number 1.
We both got cute in similar ways. So my number 1 spirit is cheating. I thought Evan was going to chide me, but I know what his number 1 is because it's my number 3. My number 1 is the most powerful spirit card that's ever been printed. It was banned in block. It has the most GP top 8s and Pro Tour top 8s of any spirit card. It is in the Legacy and the Vintage Cube. It has a Pro Tour win, and it is a sorcery. My number 1 is Lingering Souls.
Jeez.
What?
Yep.
Aaron is so upset.
Aaron is shook. Aaron,
I'm sorry. I've done this.
Go ahead and say what it does.
So Lingering Souls is 2 colorless and a white, originally from Dark Ascension. And it creates 2/1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying, and it has flashback of a colorless and a black. It makes 4/1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying for 5 total mana across 2 spells. It sees a ton of play across a variety of decks, including Jund in Modern, Stoneblade in Legacy, Hoof There It Is in Standard, 4-color gifts, black-white tokens, most recently Mardu Pyromancer and Abzan. It is just all over the place, and it is ubiquitous as a card. It, alongside Intangible Virtue, were banned in Innistrad block, making it the only spirit that I could find that was banned anywhere, except for Eidolon of the Great Revel, which was banned in Dual Commander.
Oh my God.
Lingering Souls is just a spectacularly powerful, extremely fair card.
Very spirity.
Why are you like this?
If you're mad at me, boy, do I have news for you about Evan's number 1.
It gets worse?
It gets worse.
It gets worse.
Oh, no.
Look, if you're new here, and even if you are new here,
This is my number 3, by the way.
Not as new here, I used to make this entertainment program week in and week out called The Magic Show. It had a segment once upon a time around the release of Shadowmoor. That's how old this goes back, okay? It goes all the way back. And there was a cycle of hybrid mana spells. The green one gave them like superpower and toughness or something or other, and they made them block. And the blue one looked at cards or whatever, something or other. And the white one was very simple. It was called Spectral Procession. It was 3 white or 6 colorless. It was a white and 2 generic mana 3 times. So it was the hybrid mana stuff. It's a sorcery. It creates 3 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. Now look, the reason this comes up at all, the reason this is my number 1, the reason this earns its place is I had ever so famously said 3 dudes. Seriously, I thought this was one of the worst of the hybrid mana cycles. It is easily and not even close to the best. It is the best, not close. This ran standard. It was incredible. It won Pro Tours. It was nuts how good this card was and how wrong I was. Mm-hmm. So I can claim that, and I can be as cute as I want with my number 1 in Spectral Procession.
We are role models. Do you understand that?
Here's my defense and my appeal to you, Aaron, is that, first of all, it won a Pro Tour in the hands of Paul Rietzel. It was very powerful in the black-white tokens, the black-white persist, the Martyr Life Gain deck, the Abzan tokens
I played it in Lone Pox. I'm familiar.
Boat Brew, Lone Pox, near and dear to my heart, Kithkin. Obviously, it was my number 3 because of 3 dudes, seriously. And here's the best defense that I could give you, Aaron. It is inarguable. With it as your number 1 and our number 2, and we have sorceries at number 1, that Bloodghast is the best spirit. It's inarguable, right? So that's our defense.
That's totally fine. Okay.
It was our number 2, is your number 1. See, you got
the
there.
Defense rests.
Very nice. Well, that said, that is our top 10 creatures that are spirits. And Ish. Well, yeah, it's our top 10 spirits is what it is.
There's a card missing from Evan's list that I am shocked by.
Oh.
Shocked. Like apoplectic level shocked.
This is the dungeon, or this is the Dragon's Maze-esque. Was he a creature? Or was he a spirit?
No. I'll mention it after we stop recording, because I think it might be a winner next week.
Very well. Okay. That said, you'll see them on screen now for your review. Please take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Let me tell you a cool fact.
Oh, God.
Kentucky has a state saying, and they are known for 2 things. They're known for horse racing, and they're known for bourbon.
Okay.
And their saying is unbridled spirit.
Wow.
To tie into the spirits episode.
Move to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching or listening, and I hope you support us at patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, our Magic Mike subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes or Spotify. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.